Hey everyone, this is Calvin Wu, and we are doing Book Buzz number 2. So the book I read is Guy Wright by Ralph Fletcher, and I found this book very interesting because growing up, I felt that a lot of the times it was difficult for me to really enjoy writing uh, because my teachers always it was never about topics that I wanted to talk about or um, I never felt like writing was for me. Uh, However, as I grew older, lots of things started to click with writing for me, and I eventually learned to really enjoy it. But anyways, getting into the book. So first off, this book seemed to be mainly geared toward a writer, more so like a student versus the teacher. But I found it really helpful just because it kind of helped you get inside the mind of that writer. In this case, a guy in your class, and how to best kind of reach out to him and make sure that you're aware of all the things that might be going through their mind as they, undertake this writing journey throughout their life. So, getting into the book, the main takeaways that I got were right from the get go. In the beginning, it stated things like, school really seems to dampen the enthusiasm for writing for guys at times. There's uh, usually little to no free writing, and unique approaches to these assigned topics are generally underappreciated, and it really hurts enthusiasm when something that you think is like your best paper gets a mediocre grade, or spelling and punctuation markdowns or poor handwriting. These are all things that seem to plague guys. I can attest to the poor handwriting, of course. My handwriting's terrible, but some things we covered in this classroom, like spelling and punctuation markdowns, definitely we have covered in not getting so caught up in the mechanics of editing. So a couple of the main takeaways that I had from the book as well were, just to give freedom to the writer and let them kind of express themselves creatively, not being too punishing for, say, satire or parody as they write, just because you think it's kind of uh, them being a little smart with the topic. And some of the things that uh, guys write about, I don't know why we enjoy these things, but they're things that are revolting and humorous and playful and gross and sometimes violent even. But I think it's our responsibility as educators to really see through this kind of content and focus more on writing and the process of it, and what can we really teach them from aside from what they're writing about, how are they writing, things like that is what I really took away from this book. As far as the book goes, in terms of the book is geared towards the writer, and it gives a lot of tips for things like violence in writing, and it talks about saying that there's a line between effective use of things like blood and gore, and he calls it atmospheric blood, and using vivid details in writing, and being able to teach the students as an instructor of writing that everything that you use should serve a purpose. A little bit of this goes a long way. It goes into the idea of fantasy and superheroes, where you can teach things like character development and flaws in your character, as well as putting them in like a coherent setting, a place that makes sense for the character. Or going into the aspect of horror, small disturbing details. It talks about Edgar Allan Poe and how there isn't really anything extremely terrifying, but the little things that sort of build into this sort of mounting terror and dread. As well as things like emotional writing, how emotional writing isn't just for girls, how to describe emotion, and how to effectively use emotion and the actions associated with it to really describe what it is that's happening within a character. Another portion of the book that I really enjoyed was the writer's notebook that it referred to, and this is something that I relate to personally as well. Growing up, I was in a band, and I had a book up until I was from maybe 15 until I was maybe 22. That there were several books, I guess, that I would fill with lyrics and poems and drawings and things and ideas just for songs and stories and things like that. And the writer's notebook was just a place to jot ideas down, and I really like this idea because sometimes having the tools right there for you to really quickly remember something and to explore this idea that is going through your mind really makes it click. And it solidifies it, so you're like, oh yes, I have this great idea and I need it down right now. I kind of have an analogy to it. There was a time in the 4th of July in like 2011. I was at a 4th of July party at a lake, and there was a guitar there. And I had this kind of idea going through my head, but I wasn't really sure about it. I was kind of humming it to myself, like, and then I found this guitar, and I was like, oh wait, I really gotta like just work this out right now, or I'm gonna lose it. And the lick kind of went like this. And yeah, I think back to that day, and if I didn't have a guitar at that exact moment, I would have lost that guitar riff in my head. And that short little riff right there, it grew and grew into something that I feel like was one of the best songs I've ever written. And it's a song that I actually really love personally, that I just think is really fun to play, and I just enjoy the entire thing. Anyways, so what I'm saying is having a writer's notebook available for, just to be able to write down something that comes to mind is necessary, because sometimes the ideas just come, and if you don't have a place to store them, then they'll be lost. Another thing I found interesting was the idea of pre-writing. One thing that I just don't agree with the author on, he says something like, I simply started writing and figure out the shape and substance of the story as I feel my way along, kind of stating that, yeah, pre-writing, you don't need to worry about it too much most of the time. Sometimes. He states that, yeah, it's a useful tool, but don't get too caught up in it. I agree to an extent, but I think this kind of ignoring of pre-writing occurs as you develop more skill with writing. I think pre-writing is very useful. It's a useful tool to start. I love doing outlines, and it really helps kind of consolidate my thoughts and get it all together. But sometimes it is also useful just to get started and just kind of go. But I kind of see it kind of like math. Like once you're good at it, you can start to skip all the little small steps because you know what to do already. You know where you're trying to head, and you know the steps you need to take. You don't need to draw them out and make it so defined. But anyway, I hope you guys like this little video that I did, and my main takeaways from this really cool book. I think you guys should definitely pick it up. It was actually very interesting, pretty quick to read, and had a lot of good little tips to think about as you teach as well. But anyways, I really enjoyed doing this video, and I'll see you guys later.